right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's time for our second conversation. I'll be looking at the new Cama bill that was signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari just a few days ago and how that would impact your business or the new business you're thinking of registering. Mr. Chukwu just surprised me right now. I actually thought I was going to have him via Skype from Lagos, and he just walked into the studio. Johnson Chukwu, the Group Managing Director at Cowry Asset Management. Mr. Chukwu, welcome to the program. It's been a long time we've seen before we saw the last time before the lockdowns.
Yeah, I suspect it was like March or February that I last came to your studio.
Yes,
in person.
February. I think we spoke just a week before the first confirmed case or so, or was it?
Yes, it was. And then we have spoken severally after that.
Yes, via technologically. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
The new Cama law signed President Buhari about 15 provisions there. When I was taking the 15 innovations.
Major, yeah.
Yes. Speak to me about what you think. 30 years coming. The last one was done in 1990. So this repeals that one and replaces it. Speak to me about your views. Why is it that our laws are always so outdated? It takes 30, 40, 50 years, stamp duties before we repeal and replace.
You know, Nancy, the good thing about the amended Cama is that just like you said, we last saw here in person sometime in March this year. And despite the distance, despite my inability to come here, we kept interacting, I kept appearing on your programs because technology has actually advanced. The good thing about the current Cama, the new Cama, is that the government also recognizes the advancement in technology and incorporated advancement in technology into the new law, which for me is the most exciting aspect of it. The fact that the law now make provision explicitly for virtual AGMs, for electronic filing of returns, for electronic certificates. See, these are what we've been pushing for, that our laws should be forward-looking. And if you look at some of the provisions of the new Cama, or the amended Cama, you will see that for the first time, or let me not say for the first time, it's clearly a forward-looking piece of legislation. We've actually incorporated what happened just a couple of months ago, which is the COVID, and we are now going to allow for virtual AGM meetings. And that will come with a lot of cost savings, a lot of improvement. The fact that private companies can now have one individual incorporate the company and have limit his liability to the amount that's invested in that company as a share capital. So these are factors that will encourage people to incorporate business. Some of the challenges we've had, which is also why our economy is not as big as it should be, is that there's a lot of informality in our economy. The economy is not formalized compared to what we have in South Africa. South Africa is a smaller economy in terms of GDP, but it's a far more formalized economy. Major companies in South Africa are incorporated. Today, the SMEs, or MSMEs, which is micro, small and medium scale enterprises, account for 48% of our GDP. But 99% of them are not incorporated. So they are not brought into the formal structure of the economy. So with this piece of legislation, you're going to have a lot more companies being incorporated. And once you have them incorporated, they will be formalized. They will ultimately grow. It becomes easier for them to adopt policies and strategies that will allow them grow and become an integral part of the economy, in the sense that, look, you could actually create more jobs. It becomes easy for government to tax them, because when a company is incorporated, it's there, you can see them, you can relate with them, and then you separate them from the owner, which is some of the problems we have. Part of the reasons why we don't have companies who have actually succeeded their founders is because the ability to separate ownership and the corporate entity in Nigeria has been very weak. So I hope this law will allow us to adopt that approach.
If we can, with the time that we have left, let's take a look at some few of the provisions. You said one thing that excited you was the virtual AGM meetings. Perhaps you and your board of directors, you don't need to spend so much money now to bring them to Lagos or to put them in one hotel, cozy for 2 nights. You know, you can do via Zoom or any medium that you choose. Let's take a look at the provision of single-member shareholder companies. The new Cama now makes it possible to establish a private company with only 1 member of shareholder. What does that mean?
What it then means, you know, the 1990 Cama actually made provision that a minimum of 2 shareholders must be involved before you incorporate a company. Today, because if you look at in a lot of small and medium-scale businesses, the incorporated business is just the father and the mother, or the father, and in some instances, minors, children who are minors. They just to conform to that requirement that you must have at least 2 shareholders. But today, Nancy can actually decide to incorporate Nancy Nnaji limited liability company. And it will just be you as a shareholder, because the investment you're making in that company is basically your sweat. It's your money. You don't need to bring in a third party who has no interest whatsoever in what you want to do and make the person a shareholder. And that way, you avoid some of the conflicts that come about as a result of bringing people of diverse interests into forced marriage, because you need to have somebody, a second person as your co-shareholder. That will also make it easy, because a lot of, like I said, a lot of the businesses we have today, in fact, the report I saw from PwC said about 96% of the number of businesses in the country are micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises.
Yes. And they provide 84% of jobs. They
provide 84% of employment and cover for 48% of our GDP. What will happen is that those 96% of the company, a reasonable percentage of them will be incorporated. And like I said, when you have them incorporated, because the business is actually a one-man business, it's a sole proprietor. So the guy is trading in just Chukwu and brothers. But where are the brothers?
He just put the brothers there because the law mandated him to put the brothers.
Yes. But now, he can actually have just Chukwu Limited. And then, when you do that, it eliminates, like I said, the problem of bringing people who have no interest in that business. I've seen businesses, I'm not going to use specific name of somebody who incorporated a business with his brothers, and the brothers were not in any way involved in the business. And when the man passed on, the brothers came in. And then that business collapsed because they started struggling, because they were actually shareholders in that company.
Without input.
Without input, without interest in the business. But immediately the man died, they felt, there's a trove of wealth. We need to, and we're party to it. And the truth is that the law had actually made them party to it.
Enabled them to do that.
So that will eliminate those conflicts. But again, it also makes it easy for such business to be incorporated. The second factor you have to look at, instead of having authorized share capital, you have to register share capital. The registered share capital will now be based on your operating capital need. And therefore, you're not going to go pay stamp duties on registered authorized share capital that you don't need. I know I spoke with somebody, a regulatory head, yesterday. And some of the challenges in that industry is that because they are requesting operators to further capitalize to a new minimum. And operators are running away from paying stamp duties on the increase in authorized capital.
I get you.
So because that amount you have to pay a stamp duty on increased authorized capital is not necessary. So that will address that, and that would reduce the cost of registering companies or cost of operating businesses, because you don't have to incur costs you don't need.
Let's take a look at the electronic filing. That means electronic filing, electronic share transfer, e-meetings for private companies, definitely. Do we need to explain that again? Electronic filings. Let's talk about procurement of a common seal, no longer a mandatory requirement.
Yes, you know the truth is that the common seal was supposed to evidence the legality of a contractual engagement, commitment by a company. But the reality is that because you have gone into electronic virtual platforms where your signature can be signed electronically, you don't need to bring a seal and
stamp it.
Stamp it. Once you, one of the things to do today is that if it's coming from your phone can be a means of authenticating that is coming from you. If it's coming from any of your electronic gadgets, it can be a form of authentication.
Yeah. And if you send you a signal that's something...
Yes. And then you can actually sign your signature electronically. Today, you can use your, put your fingerprints electronically and send the report, which is basically to authenticate. Remember, the seal is to authenticate that this document originated from the company and has the consent of the directors to be issued. But technology has actually made that need redundant, and so why keep it?
Hello YouTubers, welcome to Moneyline with Nancy TV YouTube channel. This is where we provide you with instructive business directions, processes, and guidance to help you assess the right resources to fund your businesses to withstand every form of internal and external shock. You will find here awesome informative videos on business, entrepreneurship, and lifestyle just to help you make informed business and financial decisions. Punch the subscribe button and let us drive you through the world of business. Please follow all our social media platforms on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and follow us for latest updates on our website. The other interesting thing that I also saw was exemption from the appointment of company secretary.
And the standard auditors.
Because even for Johnson, Chukwu and brothers, for you to have that to register that, you also need a company secretary.
Absolutely.
So now, you don't need that.
You don't need them.
So if it's Nnaji Limited, I'll just go, I don't need a company secretary.
And you know, some of those things, which is why I'm quite pleased with this piece of legislation, is that there are a couple of demands that the previous law was making on people that were making them to behave unethically.
True.
So you really don't have a secretary, and then you get somebody to just sign as secretary.
Yes.
But now, because of requirement, you don't have to register somebody with Corporate Affairs Commission as your company secretary. But the person has no idea of what you just sign. In some instances, your wife is your company secretary. And the person signing has no understanding of what document they are signing. So that will eliminate it because it wasn't necessary. But in any case, once you have a single shareholder, you don't need to compel the single shareholder to also have a company secretary. The issue of external auditors. You realize that a lot of private companies, you know what they do? They just cobble together financials, which they produce verbally. There's no underlying supporting financial records for that so-called audited account. And they get it to somebody by the corner who signs as auditors and stamp, and then you have an audited account. Which, like I said, some of these requirements make adherence to ethical standards difficult for small and medium-scale because they don't have the financial muscle to pay the external auditor, to pay the company secretary. But now, with this policy, they don't need to get involved in those things. And let me also tell you, Nancy, the benefits of the electronic filing, virtual AGMs, now that you have your certificates electronically, is that some of the toll gates that are built along the way of complying with statutory rules will be eliminated because you don't need to interface with anybody.
Wouldn't it also be a loss of jobs for perhaps some of the lawyers around this kind of business? You want to register a company, you find like a young lawyer, you give the person your name, the person goes to CAC, looks for the name filing, approval. No, you understand what I mean? Which is
why I say that we are going to eliminate some of the toll gates. I'll give you an instance.
Work for the boys, is it not off?
Let me tell you one thing about a working economy, is that when you have a working economy...
I like that your sentence, a working economy.
Yes, when you have a working economy, there'll be displacement of jobs. But because the rate at which the economy is growing is faster than the rate at which jobs are being displaced, those who are displaced will have the opportunity of finding better jobs. A classical example, Nancy, is that Nitel was a monopoly. Nitel, they said, had 450,000 lines, which we are never effectively working. Today, we have more than 100 million lines. How many people were Nitel employ? How many people are under employment in the current technological GSM environment? How many people are employed in ancillary businesses? Look at what that technology has done to our entertainment industry. A lot of people who are employed in the entertainment industry are a fallout of the advancement in technology because we opened the economy and grew that telecommunication sector, which now accounts for about 14% of the GDP. Before GSM licenses, it was not recognized in our GDP measurement. So if anybody was displaced because the E1 lines are no longer the E1 points where you have to go and plug the, your phone line to the network, it's no longer working today. The exchange has completely become redundant. A lot more people have been employed in other value, in the entire value chain of the telecommunication sector. That's what will happen. So when we eliminate redundant jobs, and then that enables the economy to breathe better and free up shackles or limitations to the economy, you are going to see a lot more faster economic growth, which will create opportunities for those who have been displaced.
Let's talk about creation of limited liability partnerships and limited partnerships. That's part of the provision. Also look at reduction of filing fees for registration of charges, merger of incorporated trustees. Just trying to see what we can...
Okay, if you look at incorporated partnership or limited liability partnership, the basic thing is this. The concept of limited liability, we have to understand that, which means I have subscribed to this company. I am putting in 5 million of my money, but that's the maximum of my liability to the company. So if anything goes wrong, you're not going to attack me and take out everything I have saved in my life because a business I've started or I invested in has failed. I'm not that I'm saying that businesses should fail, but by having limited liability partnerships, it will be easier for people to go into partnership where the article or the object clause of that business is most appropriate to be run as a partnership. Okay, instead of an incorporated limited liability company. So you're going to have a limited liability partnership and also you have limited partners. Those partners, you know, in partnership you have unlimited partners and limited partners. Unlimited partners are the ones, most instances are the ones who are running the business whose liabilities are not limited to the amount they put in the business. And then you have a limited partner who in most instances is not an active partner, who you come to and say, look, I want to set up a bottling, water bottling company. I said, okay, Johnson, Nancy, okay, you're a good woman. Okay, I'll give you 2 million. So you give me 5% or 10% of the business. But I go back to Lagos. You're running the business. So, but my liability is limited to the amount I put in there. I am inactive partner, but also my liability is limited. So you don't need to, in case of failure, business insolvency or bankruptcy, the law does not have to come after me. So and that way, it's easy for people to say, okay, look, a young man, a young entrepreneur, a young enterprising person who has come to me, okay, I'll give you money, just go and do your stuff. If it works out well, give me some dividend. Yeah. But if it doesn't work out well, I don't want any additional claim on me.
Okay. Reduction of filing fees, I think that's simple enough.
Yes, on the filing fees and then charges on filing fee on charges. You know, basic thing is that if you have to have a charge on your asset, and then you have to pay a huge filing fee, it becomes difficult for people to provide the assets as collateral. Because the cost of placing that charge, I know of instances where we take assets as collateral, and then we really can't file our interest because the cost of that interest, the cost of filing that charge is so high that negates the transaction objective or makes the transaction entirely unviable. Because if you have to pay so much as fees to place a charge on that asset, then you look at this transaction is a 90-day transaction or a 180-day transaction, and then you have to incur so much cost. Then you are compelled not to file the charge on that asset. And therefore, you leave yourself exposed.
Okay, lastly, because we don't have time, let me take a look at, just like a minute or so, let's talk about the enhancement of minority shareholder protection and engagement. That is also quite interesting.
Yes, you know, in a lot of businesses, because the majority shareholders they have very low voice, they are not in management position, they are not involved in the board positions. You realize that in a lot of instances, the companies where they have invested in either going south, maybe going south, and they have no contributions to make. And now, with this law, it will allow them to, one, seek for remedies through the institutions of governance and the institutions of the regulators, so that they can, where their voice is not being heard, or where their interests are not being protected or are being abused, they can ask for remedies. They can take measures that will stop the company from being bled to death. So that way, the interests of minority shareholders will be better protected. Unlike what we had in the past, where the managing shareholders only know. Of course, there are a lot of things that have been brought into place for publicly quoted companies. A publicly quoted company must have an board audit committee that is headed by a minority shareholder. The minority shareholders actually appoint among themselves the members of the board audit committee, particularly the chairman of the board audit committee. For publicly quoted companies, there a lot of measures have been put in place. Private companies, the private companies many of them do not even hold AGMs. So many shareholders are not even aware of what's going on. They only come to know when something goes drastically wrong.
The other thing I also need to mention, I think in this Cama law, you are not supposed to be a director in more than 5 companies.
5 quoted companies.
Publicly quoted companies. So, like you now, I don't know if you're a director in more than 5.
No, I'm not a director in more than 5. I'm a director in only 2 one public quoted company and 3 other companies that are not publicly quoted. But let me also tell you, I was going with somebody, a very notable person, a mutual friend of ours, who is widely respected in the country, and he was telling me, look, that people were asking him to bring somebody to the board of a company, and he said, I have a friend who I could have brought, but I'm not going to stress him further, because the truth is that if you are director in several companies, you find out that you really can't give your best in all the companies, particularly publicly quoted companies that are making so much demand on corporate governance demand on directors. So if you're in a position where you can't read documents ahead of board meetings, you can't contribute to board meetings because you are overwhelmed by the number of boards you sit on, then the benefit of your being a director is defeated. And I think that's what they want to restrict, because if you really have so many, you cannot be effective in all of them.
Okay, lastly, people will say, did the government really put a time to this? Are we expecting like a gazette or something for this to take effect?
No, there's nothing called
I didn't see a clarity on that.
No, there's nothing called a gazette. Once a law is signed, a bill is signed into law, the bill becomes effective. The law becomes effective the date is signed into law. And that's exactly what happened. The president signed it into law last week. So we have a new
I think
Cama.
it wasn't like that for Finance Act, because the Minister of Finance mentioned, I think it was to take effect, if I'm not mistaken, March 1, or it was signed, I think, in December.
But remember that the fundamental law governing business in the country is the Companies and Land Matters Act.
So it has taken effect? Yeah,
it has taken effect. It's a foundation. Every other law that governs company in the country must draw, just like the constitution of the country must draw from Companies and Allied Matters. Anyone that is contrary to Companies and Allied Matters has become void to the extent that is contrary to the Companies and Allied Matters Act. Okay.
I think our viewers have been able to learn from this. This is one of very educative shows. I know we'll be having educative shows, but this one is one of it. So that you understand, you want to start a company now, we've explained it. In case you've missed it, go to YouTube or share to your friends our YouTube link concerning this interview to watch. I'll promise you I'll continue to still look at it, because a lot of people still need clarity. Thank you very much, Mr. Chukwu, for coming, for surprising me.
Well, it's your birthday gift. That's why I came.
Thank you. All right, at this point, that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. I'm handing you over to Sadiat Dosumo in the news studio to take us further with AIT reports. Keep safe. Be the better version of yourself. I'll see you all tomorrow, God willing.
Thank you, Nancy. And how was the show? Thanks for joining us on AIT Reports. I am Sadiat Dosumo. Please be sure.
Thank you for watching our video. Please hit the subscribe button below, turn on post notification to follow all our updates.